So Nike seems to have a new spokeswoman. There's a picture of Christine Blasey Ford standing up in front of the Senate with her eyes closed and a little swoosh up above her, and it says, "Believe in something, even when you can't remember anything." It's really sad to see what's happened to our Senate. It is not a decorous place. There are accusations that are being thrown around, and anyone can be subject to accusations. And in fact, there's a story that we all grew up with, that we learned about, that most of us have read. And it's called To Kill a Mockingbird. Did you guys remember reading that in high school? Who here has read To Kill a Mockingbird? Well, seeing the movie, I guess, is the Cliff Notes version of it. But let me just give you a quick synopsis, because I had to go and remind myself of what it's about. There's a woman called Mabel in an Alabama town, and she is being beaten by her father, who's an alcoholic. And she doesn't have much of a life, but she has this black man who she pays to come in and do different things around the house. And she starts to like him, and she wants to have relations with him, and he doesn't want to have anything to do with her. And so eventually she accuses him of rape. And she's been beaten by her father, so it looks like she might have been beaten by the black guy whose name is Tom Robinson. And Atticus Finch, who's the hero of the story, is a lawyer. And he goes to defend Tom Robinson, and he's a white lawyer, the only white guy in the entire town who's willing to defend him. This is back in the 1930s, back when there was still prejudice in America, unlike today. But back then, all the white people on the jury were inclined to believe the white woman's accusations against Tom Robinson. No matter what he said, no matter the fact that there wasn't any proof, because the only proof they needed to see was a white woman's word against a black man's. And so he was convicted, even though Atticus did a great job of poking holes in the story and showing all the inconsistencies and showing that it shouldn't have been believed. And Atticus had to stand up in front of a white lynch mob who wanted to go ahead and kill Tom Robinson even when he was in jail. But he defended him, prevented it from happening, shaded him into not killing him. He left the scene, and so the sheriffs arranged for a prison break in which they could catch Tom Robinson and shoot him 17 times in the back. And that seemed to diffuse all the anger from the white lynch mob. But unfortunately, in the process of Atticus showing how Mabel was probably lying and doing it under oath, Mabel's father was humiliated and shown to probably be the one who had abused her. So he, being the coward that he was, went after Atticus's children. One of them called Scout and the other one Jeb. And this is when Boo Radley, the guy, the recluse, the one who hid in the shadows, comes out to defend the two children when they're about to be stabbed. And in the process of defending them, he ends up killing Mabel's father. So there's two deaths that result from this lie that Mabel told. Her father ends up dying, and also Tom Robinson ends up dying. Now this is a fictional story, but it's based on a real event that happened in Alabama back in the 1930s. So this was something that was witnessed, was made into a fictional story, but it's like historical fiction. And one of the reasons everybody likes it so much is they can sense the truth in this. Now it's interesting to take that story and juxtapose it next to what's attempting to happen in our Senate. Because there used to be a time when Republicans would vote for Democratic Supreme Court justices that they didn't like. And Democrats would vote for Republican candidates that they didn't like, unless they could find a really, really good reason why he wasn't qualified. It was not, let's make sure we get the outcome we want. It was, let's focus on the process and making it fair. One of my heroes that I never thought I'd say this is a Democrat. His name is Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz, who I disagree with on almost everything, happens to agree with me on the concept of due process. He came out recently and said that it was unfair to have the attorney for Donald Trump have all of their records raided by the FBI, and how if it was a Democratic lawyer and the lawyer-client privilege was violated, the ACLU would be up in arms. There'd be people rioting all over the place. So he came out and defended due process. And it was interesting after that because he said that he was vilified more for doing that, for defending Trump. Even though he wasn't really defending Trump, he was just defending due process. He was vilified more for that than when he stood up for that killer with the size 12 shoes. You guys know who he is. What's his name? OJ
Simpson.
Oh,
He was on the OJ's dream team.
Bruno Mali.
So he got criticized more for defending Donald Trump than a guy that everyone in this room knows is guilty of killing his wife. That's one of the few Democrats and liberals who believes in due process. What happened to the rest of them? I don't understand it. And what's worse is, I think based on earlier, we had a roundtable on this topic, and I think most of the guys felt that you needed to have some evidence before you would destroy a person's reputation. If you go to France, they actually think it's unfair to bring charges against you unless there's a preponderance of guilt. So they actually have a system of guilty until proven innocent in France. It's the Napoleonic Code. We rejected that in America. We went for innocent until proven guilty. But you would never know it based on what we're now witnessing. Now there's some people who would say, well, it's not a trial. And yet everyone who's standing in front of that committee has to raise the right hand and pledge on the Bible to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help them God. It's not a conversation. It's not a job interview when you're swearing to go to jail for perjury if you lie. If every person who's ever lied to me in a job interview went to jail, there'd be nobody working for me. I'm sorry. People sometimes say stuff under oath that they don't even know they're saying. They don't even intentionally lie, but they like to exaggerate. Mrs. Ford may believe what she has accused him of, or she may be mistaken. But it's pretty easy to see how she might be mistaken when she doesn't remember where the house was, doesn't remember the time, doesn't remember whether it was upstairs or downstairs, doesn't remember how she got home, doesn't remember why she didn't tell her best friend anything about the evening, doesn't know why it took her 32 years to remember it. She did seem to remember that she wanted to have 2 front doors because she remembered back in whatever the date was. She said she remembered at some type of therapy session that she had had this horrible experience that she had repressed. She had actually put the second door on 4 years earlier. She had put it on 4 years earlier so she could get extra income by renting it out to a second tenant. But it's interesting how none of that was allowed to come out in the shenanigans that we saw at the committee. There's other discrepancies, like the fact she couldn't show up for a week because she was afraid of flying, supposedly. Then they showed how she just jetted all around the country going everywhere she wanted on vacation and never seemed to have a problem with it. There's 65 women who have gone under oath to say that they believe Mr. Kavanaugh. 65 women. If we want to believe the preponderance of women in this case, we should believe Brett Kavanaugh, because he's got 65 women under oath who believe in him and say that he would never do this against 2 accusers who can't seem to get their story straight. And let's look at Swetnick. Swetnick says that there was gang raping going on. Gang raping. Interestingly enough, her old boyfriend says that the very first thing that she said when they met is, "Would you like to have a threesome?" And he was sort of excited thinking it was going to be 2 girls and 1 guy, but no, she meant 2 guys and 1 girl. Her own father, when interviewed by her old boyfriend, Mr. Swetnick's father, said, "This woman has psychological problems." Now, I'm not one for trying to gang up on the women because I'm married to a woman. I have 4 daughters of my own, and I'd like to believe that I would stand up for them if they ever came to me with an accusation. But I'd like to see that they have some sort of proof rather than just making an accusation and having nothing to show for it and doing it 32 years after the fact. Fellow Toastmasters.